Generally speaking, people talk about differences between those of a liberal um, constitution or outlook and those of a conservative constitution or outlook. It's often said that uh, conservatives have more of an interest in law and order, and um, liberals have more of an interest in compassion, and that liberals tend to put more uh, tend to focus more on empathy, have a higher regard for empathy. And maybe that was once true about liberals, but it is not. It is definitely not true today. Definitely far from true today. What I see happening on the left, it's this entire. It started with this, this quote unquote first world problems thing. When people started saying, "Oh, first world, what a first world problem," um, you know, like you don't deserve to be sympathized with because you didn't grow up in a village where you know that's full of filthy sanitation where people are starving, and therefore your problems don't matter. What that is symptomatic of is, in general, an empathy problem that I see um, much more among people who would consider themselves to be of the left than uh, than those not of the left. What people of the left today tend to say is there are certain groups deserving of empathy. Group uh, X, Y, and Z, groups X, Y, and Z ought to be treated with the utmost empathy. And what they mean by empathy is, just never to be held to account. So, in effect, this takes away their humanity. In effect, this infantilizes these kinds of people. So if they do something wrong, it's just because of the legacy of colonialism or whatever. But these groups are deserving of empathy and then some. Empathy plus. But if you're from groups A, B, or C, you deserve no empathy. And it goes as far as like, there's so, and this was parodied in in the latest Beavis and Butthead movie. I remember where Beavis and Butthead, I don't know, show up in a college classroom, and the professor starts talking about how they're obviously, uh, of children of privilege because they're white boys, uh, and whereas Beavis and Butthead really, their upbringing is that they're basically white trash, and but I mean they're, of course, Beavis and Butthead are cartoon characters meant to be comedic, but people on the left go so far as to say, if you're white and poor, that you still you're still privileged. Like they would go to some uh, some hamlet in Appalachia or Appalachia, however you're supposed to say it, and come across some impoverished area that's just ravaged by OxyContin and heroin, and people are miserable there, and because their jobs have been taken away because America doesn't have an industrial force anymore. All those jobs went overseas, and so these white working class types who have been abandoned. This whole profile, this entire demographic tends to be looked down on by leftists, because of their race, because it's assumed that you look at them, their complexion is a certain way, therefore they are deserving of no empathy. Therefore, they are people of privilege who deserve no empathy. And I mean this what should we call it? This empathy crisis is thanks to sentiments generally shared by the left today. Now, maybe this wasn't always the case, because in the past, the left talked less about race and more about class. And it was, like the Clash in the 70s saying about white riots, meaning white, working class exploited people need to stand up for their rights too. Whereas today, the whole idea of a song called White Riot, like no even faintly leftish, band or cause would come anywhere near espousing such a thing. It would just be automatically thought of as beyond the pale. Beyond the pale. No pun intended. And the thing is, I often go back to the words of St. Paul, the famous letter. I believe it's the letter to the Corinthians, one of the two letters to the Corinthians. Someone in the comments will say which letter it was and what are the exact chapter and verse. But it's probably the most famous lines of the New Testament that are that don't, not including anything in the Gospels. About love, about how faith, hope, and love, or in the older translations, love is referred to as charity. Faith, hope, and charity are all important, but the greatest of them is love or charity, and empathy could also be plugged in. It's essentially the same thing. And what does Paul say there? He says, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it in front of me and I don't have it memorized or anything like that, but from what I'm remembering, he says, if I do great things, if I accomplish wonderful, if I just set the world on fire with my fervent faith, and my capacity for hope, but I don't have love, then I have nothing. I'm a clanging gong, without without any coherence, without anything that really has substance or that matters. And when he's referring to love or to charity, or as I'm insisting here, because I think this is the essential part of it, to empathy. If you don't have that, then there is no substance to your faith, because what is faith? It's to believe in God, and God is love. And if God is love, and we're supposed to imitate God, then we ought to take on that attribute ourselves. And I guess one can question how can there be a hell if God has empathy? The way I would answer that would be to say that he has empathy enough to allow those who reject him freely, and who know that they're rejecting him, and are aware that they're rejecting him, and do it because they want to do it. It would be, in a way, cruel to say, well, you're still going to be with me. I'm still going to make you come with me. If they freely choose not to be with him, he says, okay, fine, go where you want to go. You probably aren't going to like it there, but you've chosen it. So that's what I would say in answer to that thorny sort of dilemma. Now, does empathy mean you're just always brimming over, like you're always breaking down crying, and what have you? Well, I mean, there is the verse Jesus wept. We don't ever read about Jesus that I know of. I don't think there's a reference to Jesus's facial expressions at all. I don't think we ever hear about Jesus smiling. That's not or laughing. That's not to say he didn't smile or that he didn't laugh, but just it's never discussed. It's never talked about. But there is a verse which reads, Jesus wept. And Jesus weeps at the death of Lazarus. And he weeps even though he knows that he's going to bring Lazarus back to life, because he knows the human feeling of grief, which is connected to compassion, of course. But that's where I would place this whole idea, this whole notion of empathy, of the importance of empathy. Now, what about people who just aren't constitutionally able to feel empathy? Sociopaths. Well, I mean, we're told X percentage of the population are sociopathic. I don't know how they know that. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if I've ever known a sociopath. Do they exist? Of course they exist. They pretty much run the world, in my opinion. And a sociopath, apes empathy. He pretends to have empathy, but he doesn't actually know what empathy is. He can't. It's like a foreign idea to him. So sociopaths exist, but if you're a sociopath, you still know the difference between right and wrong, even if you don't feel anything one way or the other. You still know it in your heart, because it's part of how we were created. Some people were, for whatever reason, were born without sight, or were born with disabilities, and maybe being born. If you are born a sociopath, which I'm not sure, I'm not ready to take on that whole question of whether you're born a sociopath, or born or made, or whether both are possible. But I'll just say, if you're born a sociopath, if you're a sociopath against your will, then you know what it's like to behave as one who feels empathy. Even if you don't know what empathy feels like. So what I'm saying is, you can still do what is right. Even if you're a sociopath, you can still live a righteous life. So it's different if you choose not to. But we always have a choice. But getting back to what I was saying in the first place, we need to get back to the idea that everybody has things that they're struggling with, and that we ought to get away from the idea that one's struggles ought to be belittled because we think of whoever this person is as quote unquote privileged, and so somehow being quote unquote privileged means your struggles aren't real. I would like to see that. I would really like to see more. That I would like to see more of that mindset be prevalent. Just because, I'm just really tired of, hearing about people's experiences being negated for whatever reason. It's not right. And whether you believe it or not, and I think a lot of people just opportunistically believe in this privilege crap because it enables them to gain a foothold. It's virtue signaling to talk that way. But I think it isn't the correct way to be. That's how I'll just end this somewhat rambling video. Thanks for watching.